Princess Diana's death in 1997 shocked the world, but Queen Elizabeth's initial reaction left many people puzzled. Here's the truth behind the complicated relationship between Diana and the Queen. The relationship between Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana goes back all the way to Diana's childhood, years before she met and became engaged to the future King Charles III. In fact, Elizabeth was named as one of Diana's younger brother's godmothers, and Diana's father served as personal assistant to Queen Elizabeth's father. As history professor Ariane Chernock told Reader's Digest, Diana's family had many ties to the royal family that dated back decades. The family was well known and well connected with close royal ties.
She came from a very aristocratic dynasty. The Spencers go way back in history.
Diana was born and grew up at Park House, which is on the grounds of the royal family's estate, Sandringham. As many fans and followers of the family know, Charles even dated Diana's older sister Sarah before his relationship with Diana began. Charles and Diana were properly introduced in 1977 when the former was invited to Diana's family's home. Despite those ties, getting married wasn't a sure bet when Diana and Charles began their relationship. While Queen Elizabeth was certainly aware of Princess Diana and her family, the two weren't formally introduced as potential mother and daughter-in-law until 1980, when Diana was invited to the royal family's home, Balmoral. As British history professor Ariane Chernock explained to Reader's Digest, this meeting was a test for the young woman who would go on to marry the future king. Diana opened up about how she felt about the meeting in conversations with Andrew Morton for his book, Diana, Her True Story in Her Own Words. As she explained, the build-up to the visit at Balmoral was far more stressful than anything that happened once she arrived. Diana said, "I was frightened because I had never stayed at Balmoral and I wanted to get it right. The anticipation was worse than actually being there." As many of us know now, King Charles was in a relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles, now the Queen Consort, before he and Princess Diana met. By all accounts, Charles and Camilla were in love, but she wasn't considered an appropriate match for the royal heir at the time. That call might have come down to Queen Elizabeth herself. As Reader's Digest related, Queen Elizabeth pressed Charles to propose to Diana before the public lost interest in the relationship. Time reported that Elizabeth once commented, "The idea of this romance going on for another year is intolerable to everyone concerned." This indicated that she was definitely ready for the two to make things official. It also seems that Elizabeth's sense of urgency was shared by her husband, Prince Philip. In his book, Charles at 70, Thoughts, Hopes, and Dreams, royal author Robert Jobson explained that Diana described Charles's proposal as hysterical, and that Philip himself ultimately came to the conclusion that the two weren't a good match, but that Charles should essentially get married to get it over with. Some royal sources believe that the dynamic between Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana shifted following Diana's wedding to Charles. As royal biographer Ingrid Seward wrote in her book The Queen and Di, the monarch reportedly wrote a letter to a friend that included a telling sentence. She said, "I trust that Diana will find living here less of a burden than is expected." In other words, Elizabeth recognized that before her marriage, Diana had reservations about royal life, but she didn't seem to think that her daughter-in-law should carry those reservations into the next chapter. However, multiple sources indicated over the years that Diana was less than happy in her marriage. Seward claimed in her book that Elizabeth and her staff believed that she simply suffered from a bad case of nerves. Ingrid Seward has written about the relationship between Princess Diana and Queen Elizabeth several times over the years. In her book, The Queen's Speech, an intimate portrait of the Queen in her own words, Seward explained that Diana was quite a bit more emotional than her mother-in-law, and it became tough for Elizabeth to know how to handle outbursts. In one example, Seward claimed that Diana told the Queen, "Oh, Mama, because that's what Diana used to call the Queen. Everybody hates me. Your son hates me." According to Seward, Elizabeth was genuinely unsure of how to respond. As the author detailed, Elizabeth was raised during a time when women were not allowed to have emotional outbursts, and the full weight of the agony Diana felt was almost too much for her. As her marriage to King Charles began to crumble, Princess Diana turned to her mother-in-law for advice and reassurance. By 1986, King Charles had completely resumed his affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, and Diana was desperate for some kind of help or information that could change things for her.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
According to the documentary, Diana, in her own words, after telling her mother-in-law that her marriage was loveless, Diana asked for help. She explained, "I went to the top lady and said, I don't know what I should do." She said, "I don't know what you should do." And that was it. That was help. Diana went on to add that Elizabeth had little to offer when she revealed that her husband was having an affair. Ultimately, Queen Elizabeth advised Diana and Charles to divorce, which was a decision they agreed with. In 1992, Andrew Morton released his book, Diana, Her True Story. The book immediately made an impact, especially as Diana and some of her friends and allies contributed directly to its content by way of interviews with the author. While no one directly confirmed that Diana herself participated in the book until after her death in 1997, its release and the implication that she had been part of putting the book together devastated the relationship Diana had with Queen Elizabeth. Following her death, Morton released a new, longer version of the book that included an 18,000-word transcript of the interviews that Diana had participated in. In addition to accusations of attempting to profit off Diana's passing, Buckingham Palace almost banned the book entirely. In this one moment, Diana's family was united with Queen Elizabeth and her family as the Spencers attempted to get ownership of the tapes used to put the book together. Despite the fact that she wrote a letter to Princess Diana calling for her and King Charles to divorce, Queen Elizabeth still appeared to want to be kind and courteous to Princess Diana following the end of the marriage. As the Los Angeles Times reported at the time, despite the fact that Charles was openly conducting an affair, it was Diana's admission that she had an affair of her own that prompted Elizabeth to tell the couple it was time to split up. Simon McCoy of Sky TV told the outlet, "One cannot underestimate how angry the Queen has been. At the palace, there's a huge sigh of relief. The Queen has decided that enough is enough." In addition to being angry, McCoy added that Elizabeth was worried about the future of the monarchy as a whole in the wake of the mess Diana and Charles created together. Ultimately, the divorce between Charles and Diana was handled well. In July 1996, the New York Times reported that the two had agreed on divorce terms. Despite Elizabeth's willingness to let Diana keep her Royal Highness styling, Charles insisted that it be dropped. One consequence of this action meant Diana technically had to curtsy to each member of the family who retained their HRH status, including her own children. Getting divorced didn't have to mean the end of Princess Diana's involvement in the royal family, and it seems that Queen Elizabeth certainly hoped that Diana could continue to be an asset to the crown. In the days that followed Diana's unexpected death in 1997, Elizabeth wrote a letter to her aide, Lady Henriette Abel Smith, that detailed many of the feelings the monarch had. In the letter, Elizabeth explained that it was clear Diana's passing had impacted people around the nation, the Commonwealth, and the world. She explained, "It was indeed dreadfully sad, and she is a huge loss to the country, but the public reaction to her death and the service in the Abbey seem to have united people round the world in a rather inspiring way.
I share in your determination to cherish her memory."
Elizabeth went on to admit that while Princes William and Harry were being so brave, the entire family was understandably emotional and unsteady. The days that followed the death of Princess Diana in 1997 were intense for everyone in the United Kingdom and beyond. It's safe to assume that Queen Elizabeth and the royal family also experienced huge waves of sadness and emotion following the news that Diana had passed. But for reasons that have not been fully explained, the monarch and her family chose to retreat from public view. This reaction was heavily criticized in the days, weeks, months, and even years that followed. In the 2017 documentary, Diana, 7 Days That Shook the Windsors, royal author Tina Brown explained that King Charles had a major reaction to Diana's death, but not necessarily for reasons you might expect. Brown said, "He was absolutely distraught. He fell apart. He knew instantly that this was going to be a terrible thing, that he will be blamed, that they will be blamed for the death of Diana." Prime Minister Tony Blair nearly immediately gave a heartfelt speech in the wake of Diana's death. Meanwhile, Elizabeth stayed quiet for days. She and the royal family retreated to Balmoral, eventually sending her press officer to defend the family to the public, who demanded to know why they weren't visible. Eventually, Elizabeth brought the family back to London the day before Diana's funeral.